Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, August 25th. Hopefully, everybody's having a good day so far today. Episode 367 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. It is a Sunday night episode, so many of you might be tuning in to this on Monday. If so, as always, appreciate all of you for tuning in. Roster cut down deadline is 4 Eastern on Tuesday, August 27th. So today, I'm going to break down my New York Jets 53-man roster prediction, final prediction before roster down day in just a little over 48 hours, or about 48 hours from now. We will know the New York Jets 2024 53-man roster. Now, before we break it all down, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS. Football season is here, and there is no better way to get in on the betting and gambling action this NFL season than with BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. Plus, my viewers, use my link, which can be found in the description of this video and in the pinned comment for those tuning in on YouTube. And when you use my link, you'll get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. So definitely check that out. BetUS, where the games begin this football season. Head on over there. Use my link, which can be found both, again, in the description and the pinned comment on this in the YouTube comments. Also, my friends over at SeatGeek, promo code Bubs on Sports for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, Hugo House, you see the hat I'm wearing right now. If you want the hat I'm wearing or any of the hats Aaron Rodgers wears all the time, use promo code Bubs for 15% off any purchase and get yourself some Hugo House swag. And all those links can be found in the description of this episode. All right, now into today's podcast, New York Jets 53-man roster prediction, as the preseason wrapped up Saturday night with the Jets defeating the Giants 10-6 in what was a low scoring, I don't know if I want to say ugly, but kind of a scoring, some missed opportunities, some missed field goals. So could have been a little bit higher scoring. Definitely some opportunities that were missed on both sides in this game, but a very impressive showing by the deep depth guys on the Jets defensive line. They wrap up the preseason 3-0. They wrap up training camp and the summer as a whole healthy, which is what matters most. And now comes tough decisions. And I'll be honest, as I sat and did this afternoon, and I've started, of course, a lot of people, you start to get an idea of who's going to make the 53, who's not, what are the roster battles, what are guys that are impressing, guys that aren't impressing, all that stuff. And I'll be honest, this has been, in the years I've been doing this has been one of the hardest 53-man rosters for me to predict, because there's so much talent. There's so many guys that I try to fit onto this roster that every time you'd calculate it, it would come up to 54, come up to 55. There's a couple guys that I wanted to make the team that I tried to make it work, tried to move other guys, and it just didn't work out. So this is my prediction. This is kind of a little bit of what I think's going to happen. Some of it's what I want to happen. A lot of it, though, is what I think is going to happen, my official prediction, because there are probably some things in here that maybe I'd rather another player make the roster over somebody else. But again, it's a prediction, trying to nail this. That's kind of the point of it. So very tough, though. Very tough. Joe Douglas does not have an easy job here over the next couple days, leading into Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, to get this roster down to 53 from where it is now, where there's a lot of talent that is impressed during camp that when they get cut, or if they get cut, is going to go play what roles elsewhere. And we haven't seen that a lot with this Jets team. For forever, the New York Jets were a team that you really want to know, you would kind of get the idea of, like, the team wasn't very talented to begin with. The depth wasn't very talented. The roster was kind of bland. There was really no surprise cuts. There was really no tough position battles, because nobody was very, very good. The roster really wasn't that strong. And the Jets would be one of those teams that would always go out and try and find guys that got cut from other teams. And now the Jets are the opposite of that. They're a team that's going to cut a lot of talent that's going to get picked up elsewhere. and potentially play high-end depth roles elsewhere, maybe even start on other teams. So really tough to come down to 53, but this is what I got to. Let's not waste any more time. Let's break down my New York Jets 53-man roster prediction. So we'll start on offense, which I don't really think there's too many surprises offensively, maybe a couple, but we'll start offensively here. Quarterbacks, I have the New York Jets holding on to 2. No surprise here. Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor, those are your quarterbacks. Jordan Travis is, of course, on the NFI list, so he is not, of course, he's out with the injury, so not on the active roster, and I don't think they'll hold 3 quarterbacks. Andrew Peasley, Adrian Martinez, one of those guys both of them will obviously get cut. One of them will get picked up, I think, stashed on the practice squad. I know Mike White got released by the Miami Dolphins. I don't see that happening. Martinez or Peasley will get picked up on the practice squad most likely, and the Jets will roll with Rodgers and Tyrod as your 2 quarterbacks. No surprise there. Much refreshing look at the quarterback room this year than what we've dealt with in years past, even going back to last year where Zach was the backup. You've got a Hall of Fame starter, and you've got a quality backup that can step in if Rodgers gets banged up at any point. You go to running back, I'm holding 4. Now, I know this might come by a little bit of surprise. A lot of people think Izzy will, some people think Izzy's going to get cut. Some people think he's going to make the roster. I'm going to have Izzy making the roster. Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, those are all locks. No surprises there. Izzy, I'm going to have them holding 4. I just don't see Joe Douglas personally. From years past, what we know about Joe Douglas, I don't see him moving on from a guy that he drafted last year. Even though the New York Jets have slowly, I don't know if I would say slowly, quickly already kind of faded Izzy out of their future plans, I guess, if that makes sense, by drafting Braylon Allen, drafting Isaiah Davis, and even signing Tariq Cohen, who for a while there looked like he was beating out Izzy for a roster spot, especially with his special teams role before he retired. So even though a lot of pieces have come in to, in a way, take Izzy off this roster or make Izzy's chances much harder to make this roster, I still think he gets in. He's done everything this camp. He's had a strong camp, and he's had a very, very, very strong preseason. 21 carries on 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per carry. He's done everything you could ask for. Is it too little, too late? That's certainly a question. I just don't see Joe Douglas pairing, or I should say separating, releasing a guy that he drafted just last year. Yes, it was a 5th-round pick. I get that. I still see him making the roster, especially with some of these recent performances. And, of course, the 45-yard touchdown run he had on Saturday night. So 4 running backs: Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, Israel Abanaconda. Moving on to wide receivers. This is another one that debated a little bit. Will they hold on to 6? Will they hold on to 7? Who's the 6th? Who's the 7th? What happens here? You know your 5 locks: Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Xavier Gibson, Allen Lazard, Malachi Corley. I have them holding on to Jason Brownlee, and I also have Irv Charles making this team. Now, Brownlee, I think, should 100% make this team. I'd be honest, I'll be a little bit surprised if Brownlee doesn't make this team. For a guy that came in last year, of course, as a UDFA, him and Xavier Gibson impressed a lot during camp. Didn't do a whole lot in the regular season. Only the 1 touchdown against the Commanders. Only had 5 catches for 56 yards in 7 games. But this is a guy that I feel has put together a pretty strong summer after a slow start. Had the touchdown catch against the Commanders. And, his preseason numbers aren't crazy impressive. But I still think this is a guy that at times, I don't want to say if it's too much hate from the fan base, but at times maybe he's a little under the radar from the fan base, or flies maybe a little underrated. Doesn't get enough patience, I guess. This is a guy in his 2nd season from Southern Miss that's a UDFA. I think you've got to give him a little bit more time. We've only seen him for 7 games last year. We've now seen him a couple preseason games. I think a lot of people are giving up on him. And to be honest, I don't think Brandon Smith or even a Lance McCutcheon, even an Irv Charles, should win the spot over Jason Brownlee. I think he's better than those guys, in my opinion, from a receiving perspective. So Brownlee, I have making this team. I also have Irv Charles making this team as a receiver, special teams guy. To be honest, I wouldn't be against moving on from Irv Charles. I think you've seen enough from some of the cornerbacks in gunner roles this preseason to potentially move on from Irv Charles, who really won't do anything as a receiver. But the Jets value special teams. Brant Boyer, of course, a guy that will have a lot of say in some of these moves for special teams purposes, new kickoff rules, all that stuff. Irv Charles makes their roster for that reason, and the Jets hold on to 7 receivers. Your 5 locks, Brownlee and Charles, make the team. Moving on to tight end, real no surprises here. Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Rucker, Kenny Yeboah, Zach Kuntz gets cut. I don't think Anthony Fursker makes the team. Probably try and stash him on the practice squad. If they would to hold on to a 4th tight end, it would probably be Fursker. He can kind of be that tight end fullback hybrid. So we'll roll with 3 tight ends, Conklin, Rucker, Yeboah. Kuntz did not do anything in this preseason, did not do anything in training camp to prove that he should even make this roster as a 4th tight end. So they will move on from him, maybe stash him on the practice squad, but no real surprises there. You move on to offensive line. We'll start with offensive tackle. I've got them holding on the 5. Real no surprises. Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, your starting tackles. Olu Fashanu, your first-round pick. That'll be the 6th man, essentially, on the offensive line. He'll be the first backup. Carter Warren, and then Max Mitchell. I know some people, myself included, have talked about, is Max Mitchell going into camp, how safe was his roster spot? How much did the Jets like him? I think it's smart to hang on to him. I don't see why they would cut him, especially with the injuries history to Tyron Smith and even Morgan Moses coming off of off-season surgery. You never know when you need extra tackle depth. Max Mitchell also provides a little bit of versatility, can play guard a little bit. So I think you like the tackle room. I don't really think there's any surprises there. Carter Warren still kind of developing. He'll be your backup to Olu. Olu's your 6th guy. Carter Warren's behind Olu. And then you have Max Mitchell as well. No real surprises there. Interior offensive line, I've got them holding on the 5. So 10 offensive linemen as a whole. ABT, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, Wes Schweitzer, and Xavier Newman. The only, surprise you could say would be Xavier Newman. I don't think that's much of a surprise. We've talked about this a lot. Xavier Newman's had a very, very good training camp, and he's had a very, very good preseason. Also a guy last year that, saw some action. So Xavier Newman's a guy that I think makes the team. I know you can make a case maybe for Cole Laval or Chris Glazer or one of those guys. I think you'll try and stash, even a Jake Hansen. I think you'll try and stash those guys on the practice squad. Your 3 starters of ABT, Simpson, Tippmann, Schweitzer, who can do everything, and then Xavier Newman, more depth there. 10 offensive linemen as a whole. So overall, 10 offensive linemen, 3 tight ends, 7 receivers, 4 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 26 of the 53 New York Jets I have coming on the offensive side of the football. Again, no real surprises. Now here's where things get really, really difficult. And this is where I spent probably about a lot longer than maybe I should have trying to mix and mash, move guy away, take a guy away, implement a guy, try and get this thing to even out at 53 while trying my best to keep essentially everyone that I really, really liked what I've seen from so far this camp. But unfortunately, you just can't do that, of course, with 53 being the limit. So I don't know if I want to call this cheating a little bit, but here's what I'm going to do. And this is what I did. Hassan Reddick, I'm not going to have on the active roster as of right now. I don't see the New York Jets and Hassan Reddick. And I think a lot of people are getting this lost a little bit in terms of making their rosters, predicting. Reddick, not active roster right now. He's, of course, on the reserve / did not report list. I don't see the New York Jets and Hassan Reddick reaching a new deal by Tuesday, the cutdown day. So Reddick's going to remain on that reserve do not report list, which will open up the door for the New York Jets to stash somebody else on this roster. And then once Reddick, assuming he's here for week 1, hopefully, or whenever Reddick comes back, decides he wants to play, you activate him to the 53 and drop one of these other guys down. So here it is with Hassan Reddick not on the active roster by Tuesday. This is what I came up with. Edge, I've got 5 guys. Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Michael Clemens, Tack McKinley, Braden McGregor. I've loved what I've seen from Tack McKinley this summer. He's been awesome. He hasn't just been one of the best Jets edge rushers, one of the Jets' best Jets defenders. He's been one of the best Jets overall this preseason, and he should make this roster. I would be really I don't know if I'd be pretty frustrated. I think a lot of Jets fans would be pretty frustrated if Tack McKinley doesn't make this roster. 7 total tackles and 2.5 sacks in his 3 preseason games. Had 2 sacks yesterday, absolutely dominated. 2.5 sacks yesterday, rather dominated. Is a guy that has shown the ability to have extreme burst off the edge. You listen to him talk, you listen to him speak about what he's overcome since, since the beginning of his career, where he's had struggles being a former first round pick of the Atlanta Falcons, not living up to expectations, didn't play at all last year. A really, really pretty cool story, a special story to see him finally having success now. Tack McKinley, I think, definitely makes this team. He's looked so much better than Michael Clemens. Let's be honest here. He's looked so much better. There should not be any real debate. McKinley needs to make this roster. And Braden McGregor is my other one. I think he's looked very good in the preseason games. I think he's looked very strong, of course, in the in training camp as well. I will also say this about Braden McGregor. This is the guy that a lot of teams looked at potentially in the 6th, 7th round, 5th round even, to get him as a UDFA. A lot of untapped potential. A lot of things that I think the Jets should like and have liked what they've seen out of him. So I'm going to go with Braden McGregor over Eric Watts. I think McGregor has shown you a little bit more, in my opinion, in the games than Eric Watts has. So we'll go with McGregor for that reason, which means Eric Watts, Jalen Holmes. I tried my best to get them all. You just can't do it. The Jets aren't going to hold on to 15 defensive linemen. Holmes, Watts, 2 guys that I think will get cut, hopefully picked back up, and potentially stashed on the practice squad. Now to the interior. This is a little bit easier, in my opinion. You have your 4 locks: Quinnen Williams, Javon Kinlaw, Solomon Thomas, Lecky Fotu. No surprises there. And Leonard Taylor I have making this team. I mean, he absolutely destroyed the game yesterday with just a dominant performance against the Giants. This is a guy that I think has put together a very, very good camp. This was a guy that 2 years ago in college was thought to be maybe a potential first-round pick. Then got hurt, derailed his draft stock, and the Jets got him as UDFA. And if he can find that potential first-round pick, if the Jets can get that untapped first-round pick potential out of him, this would be an absolute steal for Joe Douglas. So Leonard Taylor at times has been streaky in camp, but otherwise really, really good, has been impressive, has been a guy from day one that we said to look out for. And I have been making this roster. So 10 guys up front on the defensive line, with Hassan Reddick on the reserve do not report list. And then once Reddick gets activated, one of those guys drop down. Maybe the Jets hold on to 11 defensive linemen and drop somebody else down from another position, however they want to handle that. But that's who I've got right now. 2 UDFAs and then Tack McKinley, who, of course, has also been a nice surprise. So McKinley, McGregor, Leonard Taylor, those, I guess, are your surprises. Don't have Tanzel Smart. Bruce Hector's another one that has shown some good things. Don't have him making the roster. Those are all guys you would like to potentially see on the practice squad. Moving on now, linebacker. CJ Mosley, Quincy Williams, Jamie and Sherwood. Obvious there. No surprises. They're all locks. Some people have kept 4. Some people have kept 5. I'm keeping 4. I'm going to go with Zaire Barnes. I think they'll get Chaz Surratt back on the roster. I know Sal likes Surratt a lot. He's especially a guy that could do some things on special teams, which, of course, the Jets value. Has a lot of speed. I just don't really get the point of keeping 5 linebackers because you would have to take away another spot elsewhere. I just don't really get fully why, you'd have to maybe take away an offensive lineman or take away somebody on the defensive line, or I guess they could hypothetically, you could only hold 6 receivers and then move that other roster spot and put Chaz Surratt there. But I don't really get, I think 4 is fine. So Zaire Barnes, he's your 4th. He's better than Surratt in my opinion. No real surprises there. Those are your linebackers. You look at your corners. Really not any surprises. Sauce, DJ Reed, Michael Carter II, that's your 3-headed monster. And in your depth, Quantez Stiggers has come in at a very, very good summer, has looked great so far as a rookie. Brandon Eccles, and in Jarek Bernard-Converse, who, while he is hurt, he should be ready for week 1. So I wouldn't put him on any. I think you can. I think there is a spot where you could put somebody on the IR and be able to take them off where they don't hold up a roster spot, and then when they're ready, I think there is something like that. But JBC should be ready to go. Those are your 6 corners. I will admit, I'm trying. I tried to get Brandon Codrington on this team. It was between Irv Charles and Brandon Codrington. It was either I hold 6 receivers or 7 corners. 7 receivers, 6 corners, or 7 corners, 6 receivers. Again, this is more of a prediction. I think Irv Charles has a greater chance of making this roster than Brandon Codrington, just because Charles has already been used in the past, and he's probably shown you a little bit more than Codrington's couple kick returns in week 2 against the Panthers in the preseason. So those are the 6 corners. No real surprise there. I mean, just a lethal unit, a lethal room, a room that should be very, very good once again this season. Moving on over to safeties. This is another one that's shouldn't come by much of a surprise. Tony Adams, Chuck Clark, they will lead the way. Ashton Davis as your 3rd. And then Isaiah Oliver, who made the switch earlier this summer from corner to safety, he will be your 4th. He should be ready for week 1. So Isaiah Oliver makes this team. And in special teams, this is as obvious as they come. Greg DeLeg, Thomas Morstead, Thomas Hennessy are your 3 specialists. And that's my New York Jets 53-man roster. Again, Jordan Travis, not on the active roster. Reddick, reserve / did not report. So not on the active roster yet. When he is, hopefully at some point, drop somebody else down. But for now, you can add somebody else on the roster in for kind of Reddick, I guess. And then once Reddick comes back, drop that guy down to the practice squad. Or have Reddick replace him. But that's it. So, again, I think you're not really, I don't know if you want to call them surprises, but your biggest questions were running back 4. I have them hanging on to a 4th running back. I have them hanging on to Izzy. 6 or 7 receivers. I have them holding on to 7 just because Irv Charles provides special teams value to them that they like, even though I think you've seen enough from Stiggers and Eccles to even JBC to maybe move on from Irv Charles as a gunner, but I still think they'll roll with Charles. So he'll be your 7th receiver, but mainly just your special teams guy. Tight end, no real surprise there. Offensive lineman, I think most people got them holding on to 10. I think most people have them holding on to the 10 that I have. And then your defensive line's the biggest question. Leonard Taylor find a spot. Do you find a spot? I think Tack McKinley's pretty much a lock. Does Brady McGregor land? What happens to Eric Watts? I think they cut Holmes. I think Watts gets cut. I think Tanzo Smart, Bruce Hector, they all get cut. I think McKinley, McGregor, and Leonard Taylor are your 3 under-the-radar guys that have come in, battled, and won a spot. And then otherwise, defensively, I don't think there's much surprises. 4 linebackers, 6 corners. Tried my best to get Codrington on this roster. I just think at the end of the day, the Jets will hold on to Charles over Codrington, but they could prove me wrong in a couple days from now. So that's my 53-man roster. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Agree, disagree. What's yours? Would love to hear your thoughts on the potential 53. And until next time, as always, JETS, 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 Jets.